This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. On Friday, the nonprofit International Institute of St. Louis made two major announcements: a pause in preparations for Festival of Nations, its much-beloved annual celebration held in Tower Grove Park, and the furlough of 60% of its staff. Both decisions were driven by uncertainties around federal funding. St. Louis Public Radio's Andrea Henderson spoke yesterday with the International Institute's interim CEO and president, Blake Hamilton. He said the Institute's Latino Outreach Initiative and the Afghan Support Program are not federally funded and will both continue to operate. However, the vast majority of their programs were scaled back or halted because of the sudden delays in receiving federal funds.
But we know that the need in the community is very high. We welcomed more than 400 individuals over the last 90 days who are expecting through the resettlement process to receive those supports that are available for every refugee who arrives. Rental assistance and staffing assistance to help get their kids enrolled in school, to help access permanent housing, to access health services, enroll in benefits. There's a laundry list of services that we provide to new arrivals that we're not able to as a result of these delays in receiving federal funding.
Blake Hamilton said the International Institute is waiting on a $1.1 million reimbursement from the federal government for services rendered in December of last year. That funding was based on a congressional budget allocation that was previously approved. The annual Festival of Nations is not federally funded, but Hamilton said planning on the festival is paused because they need to reallocate the Institute's resources in the face of federal funding cuts.
This is functionally a delay for us as we continue to assess and try to understand the impacts of things that are happening at the federal level on our programming. We have to be certain of those things and have a clear view of what the next couple of months might bring. The Festival of Nations has been happening in Tower Grove Park since 2001, and we know that it's an institution, and a lot of people have a lot of positive feelings about that. But in the outcry that we've heard around that being in jeopardy, I think shows that this community really supports diversity and supports refugees and immigrants who are new to our region. It's always been a community event, and it's meant to celebrate the contributions of immigrants and refugees coming to our community. We welcome that. We love that the community is supportive of that event.
Blake Hamilton added that the International Institute of St. Louis will rely on community in the weeks and months ahead.
We will be convening community collaborators later this week to talk about how we can continue these services and how we can partner with organizations locally to ensure that folks that are recently arrived are getting their needs met. This community, again, continues to welcome immigrants and refugees and knows the important value that they bring to our community, and the contributions that they've made over the decades is evident in most corners of this city.
Moji Siddiqui served as the International Institute's Director for Multicultural Affairs and Afghan Outreach for 3 years before resigning from the organization last week before it announced furloughs. And she joins us now to share her insights. Moji, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you for having me.
So, the big question, why is it that you resigned last week?
I resigned because it was the time for me to do something for myself, something that feels right, and that's Moji Speaks. My website's mojispeaks.com, and basically it's going to allow me to make an impact without being bound by an organization, and putting all my skills and experiences together so that I can continue on and using my skills, which is the power of storytelling. And I also started a podcast, and I want to use that platform and space to tell the stories of people like me, refugees and immigrants, and do transformational coaching and put my skills to work.
Mm-hmm. And some of that was obviously work that you were doing with the International Institute. And no one makes a decision of that kind just sort of on the turn of a dime, right? What was it that was going on before overall in the organization that made you decide that this is, in fact, the time for you to start your own thing?
Yeah, definitely a decision like that is not something that you make on a whim. It's something that has been simmering in me for a very long time. And over time, it just became more and more clear that it's something I need to do. Once R.A. was no longer with the R.A. Benson, the former CEO and president of the organization, who actually brought me on to the efforts of creating a multicultural St. Louis and bringing the Afghan support program into reality. Once he was no longer with the organization, it was really like the push that I needed to do my own thing, and the stars just aligned in that way.
And so your belief in what the International Institute does, that has not changed, right?
Absolutely not. You know, I'm an Institute baby. I came to St. Louis when I was 9 years old as a refugee with my family, and we came through the Institute. So it's an organization that's vital to the community, and it really does make a difference and impacts lives for the long term. And I support the Institute, and I'll continue to support the Institute. But I have to do my own thing, and it's important that I leverage the skills that I have. And, you know, I'm also married now, so I have other things that I want to put my focus in. I did give my heart and everything that I have to the Afghan support program and the work of creating a multicultural St. Louis. So I feel really good about the transition.
One of the things that people have had major questions about, we heard comments from Blake Hamilton, who's the interim CEO at the International Institute, who was talking about the Festival of Nations and that pause that has been put on preparations for it. He had noted this is something that has been happening since 2001, so it has had a very long and a very successful run. What do you think about the future of Festival of Nations, especially given sort of the breadth of the work that you did with the International Institute?
A lot of things come to mind as I think about the pause and the delay in preparation for Festival of Nations. Of course, I feel sad, like countless people around the city who enjoy this festival of multiculturalism. It's so much more than just delicious food. It really showcases the work that the Institute and the organizations alongside the Institute do to make this city multicultural, and the economic impact that refugees and immigrants bring to the region. I really hope that as a community we can come together and push to bring this party back to life. I think it'd be an example of a huge loss that the city would be facing if we don't come together and save it. It's more than just bringing on the Festival of Nations. The economic decline that the city is in and the population decline, we really need to figure out how to support organizations like the International Institute in attracting immigrants and refugees to the region, despite what's happening on a federal level.
Are there any concerns that you have about the continuation of the International Institute's the refugee resettlement work, especially because you have personal experience, in benefiting from that kind of program?
Yeah, I'm just concerned that, RA really was echoing the message of separating the organization's funds from federal funds and harnessing the support of the community and the stakeholders so that when an administration, like we've seen in the past, does take over and federal funds are cut off, that we don't face furloughs and we don't end up cutting off support to those that really need it. And these are the same people that make a huge economic impact in our city and the growth of the city. And we've seen it historically that the city really has been built with the support of immigrants into the region. So I'm certainly concerned. And, I, being a refugee, I also have family that's here who are not yet, don't have their green cards. And so we're concerned, are we going to, face deportation of like my direct family members and our friends and so many people that we love.
Mm-hmm. And so clearly this is very personal for you, Moji. The International Institute of St. Louis's interim CEO, Blake Hamilton, he has said that this moment in time, with the tenor and rhetoric around immigration in the U.S., is among the most challenging times of the organization's more than 100-year history.
I think the overall question is more about, what folks are experiencing all around, like not just within the International Institute. They turn on the news and they see orders and edicts and decisions that are decidedly anti-immigrant. They see blocking legal pathways to the United States or ending them. They see pulling back legal status that has been offered to them. And they see ICE raids in their community. They see all of this. And it can seem very, unwelcoming, right? As a community. It is very challenging, but they should know that as challenging as it is and as heightened as the rhetoric has been on a national level, that this is a community that welcomes them. This is a community that does support them and value their contributions to it. And this is a community that's still going to be here.
So, Moji, you did leave the International Institute before those furloughs were put in place, and they are temporary. What is the mood among the people you did work with and that you continue to work with, even though your calling card may not have the International Institute on it any longer?
I know that my former colleagues and friends are concerned about their livelihood, and I know some of them are already seeking other opportunities so that they can sustain their life, because ultimately, as much as they love what they do in service and making an impact in their roles at the Institute, they still have to have a livelihood as anyone else. I do want to echo that this community is really powerful and extremely benevolent, and the people of St. Louis have shown time and time again that they come together and pull from their resources and make a difference. I do understand that, yes, there's not going to be an opportunity for more refugees to come into the country. However, there are countless number of folks around the country that we can continue attracting, and I'm delighted to hear that the Afghan support program and the Latino outreach is still going to continue, because what we were able to build was really highlight St. Louis as a city that's inviting people to come here. So I think just hearing that that's going to continue, looking at the glass half full, is very important, because if we continue to focus on all the things that are not working well, we're not going to grow from here, and we really have to come on the other side stronger.
And Moji, I think you bring up something really important about immigration and migration. These have been identified as being critical to increasing the population density in St. Louis. We've spoken with Ness Sandoval, who's a demographer at St. Louis University, and he's described something called a demographic winter. I mean, we're in a seasonal winter now, but where if we do not have more people coming to St. Louis, then we're facing a cliff insofar as the population goes. What is it that you think should be better understood about that part of migrants coming from other parts of the U.S. to settle here, and how important the International Institute work is to making St. Louis that desirable place?
Yes. Well, 2 years ago today, I was in Albania, just talking about how great St. Louis is and informing hundreds of Afghans to choose St. Louis as a place for them to resettle in while they were in this refugee camp space. About 100 of those Albanians chose St. Louis, and they're living here, and one of them even worked at the Institute. So a lot of folks have moved to the United States. They're living in cities where it's very difficult to make a living. As we continue to highlight why St. Louis is a place to start a family, to start a business, to become a homeowner. It's essential. Otherwise, without that migration, we're going to end up in the cold, right?
As we wrap here, the Festival of Nations, for many years, people actually did not realize that was put on by the International Institute. And as I understand, Ario Benson was really pushing for people to make that connection because it's not merely about arriving here, it is about staying here. So what are your hopes for this pause being lifted? And what do you think the Festival of Nations in 2025, we're going to speak it into existence, that it's going to happen. What is it that you think will make it important in a different kind of way than it has been in the past?
Yeah, I think it'll be like a victorious story that'll tell itself about the story about how the community came together and defeated this federal monster in a small city. And that's really what the work of the multicultural efforts that we were focused on in St. Louis is. The Festival of Nations is a weekend party. Mm-hmm. If what can this city do if we work really hard together to continue being welcoming, to continue to embrace each other on a daily basis, and then we can celebrate the efforts of our daily work and our daily intentionalities of being a welcoming, truly just loving, embracing city, and then we'll deserve that party. Mm-hmm. It's really right now that we need to come together and manifest this vision now. And then in August, we can play.
Yes.
And celebrate.
Yes, and eat a lot of great food. Moji Siddiqui is the former director of Multicultural Affairs and Afghan Outreach for the International Institute. She resigned last week ahead of the organization's mass furlough announcement last Friday.
This episode was produced by Emily Woodbury.
Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.